All right, so for Chapter 9 guided project, there will be 3 required things that you have to download. The first being the resource file. So we'll click on all versions. The second required is the start file, all versions. And the third is the instructions file. All right, so you should have downloaded all 3 files, the resource file, the start file, and the instruction file. I'm going to open the instruction files. Those go into my download folder. And I'm also going to open the start file. Alright, so let's unzip the resource file. And put it all the way at the bottom. It did. That's fine. Alright, so step 1, open the workbook and click the enable editing. The file will be renamed automatically to include your name. So we see that it was renamed as my first and last name and the assignment name. So that takes care of step 1. Step 2, set macro security and display the developer tab. Let's go. Make that a little bit smaller. File, options, trust center settings. Macro settings. Alright, so that takes care of 2A, 2B. Verify or select disable all macros with notification and click OK. So disable all macros with notification is already selected. I'm going to click OK. Two D says click the, make this smaller. All right, click customize ribbon in the left pane and click developer tab. So just keep in mind when you're customizing the ribbon, it's pretty much telling you what's going to appear up here in the top tabs. So you have your home, insert, page outlet, formulas, data, review, view, and help. So as you can see, all of them are checked. So we're going to check developer. And once we click OK, we'll see developer. It'll appear right after the view. It should appear right after the view tab. So we click OK, so there it is. All right. Step 3 says open the Clemenson macros 09 file downloaded from the resource link. This is an Excel macro enabled workbook. So we're going to go into our resource folder and it tells us to open it. But before you open it, I want you to just expand the type field and you'll see that it says Microsoft Excel macro enabled worksheet. So if you ever want to know, because I'm pretty sure these two are named the same, make sure that you're in the correct worksheet. If it tells you to be in the macro enabled worksheet, confirm by looking in the type field that you are opening up the macro enabled worksheet. All right, so we see it opens up another worksheet. I'm going to move that over there. And it moves it back, but I'll move it back over there so I can see my instructions. Step 4 says return to your name workbook open at the beginning of the project. So I'm going to minimize the macro enabled worksheet, and I'm going to go back to the worksheet that has my name on it. A dialog appears with message, be careful, parts of your document may include personal information that can't be removed by the document. Okay, so now I'm back in there. Click the new sheet worksheet tab to insert a blank worksheet. Name the sheet first run. So I'm going to go down here, click my new sheet, and I'm going to rename it. I can either double click to rename, or I can right mouse click and click rename. So it tells me to name it first run. Step 6 says press Control, Shift, and plus to run the macro. The label second quarter procedures displays in cell A3 and the active cell is A4. So once I do Control, Shift, and the Q, it should put something here, but the active cell is going to be here. So I'm going to do Control, Shift, Q. All right, step 7, edit a macro in the Visual Basic Editor, VBE. A, return to the Clemenson Macros Workbook. So we need to, I recommend that you save now on your regular workbook that you're going to be turning in to be graded. Minimize, and then go to your macros workbook. Click the macros button. So we'll go to Developer tab, Code Group, and we'll click macros. We're going to select the quarter label. It's already selected, but make sure that it's selected. We're going to click the edit to open the Visual Basic Editor or VBE window. Click edit. All right, so now we're going to edit this macro. All right, it says select second quarter in the code and type quarterly. As shown in figure 9-41. So I just got rid of the word second and put ly at the end of quarter. 7D says edit the code range A4 to select to show A6. So we'll change that from A4 to A6. Close, click the close button at the top right corner of the VBE window. All right. So you see, I went back into the macro and made sure that it saved it. So let's close it again. Return to the Your Name Clemenson workbook. All right, so now I'm going to minimize the macro workbook and I'm going to open the workbook with my name on it. Insert a new blank worksheet and name it Edit Run. So let's go ahead and create a new worksheet. I double click this time to rename instead of right mouse clicking. Edit Run. All right. 7G, press Control Shift Q to run the edited macro. All right, so we see that it put something in, it put quarterly procedures in A3, and then it moved my active cell to A6. So it looks like the edit worked for us. All right, we're gonna move on to step 8. But before we move on to step 8, now's a good time to save. So I'm gonna do a Control S. All right, so this is that warning that is from step 4. It says when you see this, it says click OK. Now the reason this is a security feature. When you start using macros, the macros could, run certain things that you probably don't know that it's running. So Microsoft is being very nice and very careful in informing you that if you run this, that you might be sending personal information out somewhere that you don't know. So that's why this pops up and tells you to be careful. So I'm going to click OK. All right, step 8 says copy and edit a macro. Return to the macro workbook. So I'm going to minimize this and I'm going to open up my macro. Click the developer tab, click the macros button. So I'm already on the developer tab. I'm going to click the macros button and I'm going to select quarterly label macro. 8B says click edit to open up the VBE window. So I'm going to click edit. And I'm going to move that over so I can see my instructions. Drag the lower left corner of the code window to resize the window to approximately twice its current height. So you can't go too much higher, but that's, I guess that'll be, all right, so we resized it so we can see it a little bit more. 8D says starting at sub quarter label at the top of the code window, select all of the code. So we're going to start here and we're going to select everything. That takes care of 8D. 8E says do a Control E to copy the code. So I'm going to do a Control C to copy the code. Click below N sub. Press enter to start a new line. So click here, start a new line. And I'm going to do a Control V to paste the copy code. And then it says that we'll get a horizontal line, which we see that we have a horizontal line. That's just letting us know that this is a new section of the code. Edit the copy code as shown here. Be careful about punctuation and spelling. Figure 9-43, but I'm going to see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Nah, that's probably good. I'm just going to use this area here. Oh, I need to do that. All right, so this should be sub week label or WK label. WK label, macro, enter weekly label in cell A3. Keyboard shortcut is going to be Control, Shift, and W. Range A3 dot select, active cell dot formula R1 C1 equals weekly. Procedures, range A6 dot select and sub. So that looks like we got everything typed correctly. I'm gonna do a double check of everything. All right. Next, it says click the close button at the top right hand corner of the VBE window. Move. All right, so now it tells me to return back to the worksheet or the workbook with my name on it. So I'm going to minimize this. And insert a blank worksheet named WK Run. And then it says press Control Shift W. All right, so it does not run, as 8J says. It definitely did not run. So what we're going to do, we're going to move on to step 9. Change macro options to define the shortcut for a macro. Click the macros button on the developer tab and select the WK label. Click options. And so this is where we're going to set the shortcut key. So let's see, we did that. 9C, press Shift and W in the shortcut key box. So we're going to do Shift and W. So that's where it's going to set the shortcut key there. We're going to click OK in the macro options dialog box. So I'm going to click OK. Click Cancel to close the macro dialog box. Cancel. F. So I'm going to go back into this worksheet, WK Run. I'm going to do a Control Shift W, and you see it put weekly procedures, and it put my active cell as A6. Now's a good time to save. So I'm going to do a Control S. Control S in here. Again, I get my warning message. I'm going to click OK because I know what this macro, what the macros do in this worksheet. Moving on to step 10, record a macro to print the workbook. Make sure the default printer is ready. Switch to the macros workbook, so I'm going to minimize this. And I'm going to open up my macro. Always confirm that you're on the right workbook. Just look at the name at the top before you start doing any work. So we're in the macro workbook. Click the record button, which is in the developer tab and in the code group, and there's the record. So if you hover over record macro, it tells you what that ribbon does. It pretty much records a macro. 10C says type print W in the macro name box. So type print WB. Do not use a shortcut key and store in the macro is this workbook. So we don't want a shortcut key. And store in this workbook is selected. Type print all worksheets in the description box and click OK. Print all worksheets. Click OK. Now I'm going to go File, Print. I don't have a printer set up, so this is not going to work. So we'll go Print. Choose entire workbook. Now keep in mind that you're actually recording the macro right now. So all the steps that you perform here, it's gonna perform it once you click on the whatever button it is. So I'm gonna oh, they just put it in there. So it did send it to note. All right, so that takes care of that. And we did send it to the printer. Now I need to stop printing or stop recording. If a printer was not ready, open the printer dialog box and cancel the print job. So now I'm going to stop it. So now's a good time. I guess we'll save this because we just made some changes to it. All right, moving on to step 11. It says complete documentation for the macros. Right-click the Sheet 1 Worksheet tab and select Move or Copy. Make a copy of the sheet in your name. So while in the macros workbook, we're going to right mouse click. We're going to select Move or Copy. We're going to create a copy. In the to book, we're going to select the workbook with our name so that it'll copy this worksheet over to our other workbook with our name included on it. So right mouse click there, beginning. All right, and then we're going to place it. It says place it before the summary. And we're going to click OK. And we're going to minimize the macros workbook and open up the workbook with our name. And did it put it before? Nope, it put it before week run. So I'm just going to move sheet 1 in front of summary. And that takes care of 11A. 11B says rename sheet 1 and the your name Clemenson 09 workbook is macros. So I'm gonna rename this macros and make sure that you're in the correct workbook. So my name Clemenson workbook, and I renamed the macros worksheet. All right, it says select cell B6 and type Control plus Shift plus W and press Enter. 11D says type enter the weekly label in cell A in cell B7 and press enter. So I'm in B7. Enter the weekly label in cell A3. I'm going to press enter. Actually, I need to put a period in there. Select cell A9, type print WB, print WB, then tab. 11F says type print entire workbook in cell B9 and enter. Print entire workbook, period, enter. And then I'm going to do a control home to take me back to A1. All right, so you can confirm that everything you were supposed to type, you can confirm it with figure 9-45. That looks good, that looks good, that looks good, that looks good, that looks good. I'm going to do a control, I'm going to save my document, I'm going to do a control S. Remember, we get our warning. Click OK. You'll also get the warning if you click the floppy drive up at the top, and you'll also get the warning if you go File, Save. So just be aware that you're going to get that warning. All right, moving on to step 12, return to the macros workbook. I think I already saved it, but I'm going to return back. Click the Save button in the Quick Access. All right, so you can either click the Save up here, or you can do a Control S, or you can go to File, Save. Save toolbar. Do not close your macro workbook. So we're not closing it just yet. So now it says, step 13 says return to your name workbook. Open at the beginning of the project and click the procedures worksheet. All right, and I'm going to click on the procedures worksheet. Assign macros to button form control. Click the insert controls that's on the developer in the controls group, and we want to select insert control, and it wants us to click the button form control command and draw a button control that covers H3. So hover over, there it is, the first one. Hover, I was going to tell you to hover over each one. Do not left click, but just hover over to see what each control button does. So we want button, and it tells us to go to H3. So H3, and it tells us to put a button there. And that takes care of 14A. All right, and we do have the assign macro dialog box button. Open. It's 14C says select the quarter label macro and click OK. So I want to select this one. That's the quarter label. The macro name will be appended to your macro file name. Yep, that's what it is. 14C. Click inside the button. So I need to click OK. It says click inside the button, delete the default caption, and type quarter. So you actually have to double click to get in edit mode. I'm going to type quarter, and then select I3 to deselect H3. So I'll select I3. So after I deselected it, you see it says quarter. Draw a button in cell J3 for the WK label macro. So I'm going to go to J3 and I'm going to insert, go to my button, and I'm going to do that. All right, and I'm going to select, it doesn't tell me whether we're going to change this caption to week. So I'm going to make sure I select WK label, click OK, double click, get rid of button 2 and type week. And then I'm going to select I3 to deselect J3. That takes care of 14F. 14G says draw a button that covers I4 to I5. So we're going to go to so I4 all the way to I5. And we're going to select print WB or print workbook. Click OK. Print WB. All right, so looks like we have all of our buttons. We'll confirm with figure 9-46. So we have quarter, we have week, and we have print expanding as far as it says. Now it says select cell A1. You can either select cell A1 or do a control home. It should take you back to A1. Now it tells me to run the macros. So before I even do that, I want to do a control S to save. Click the button to run the weekly label and verify cell A6 is selected. So I'm going to click week. So it took me to A6. Make sure the printer is ready. 16B. 16C says click the button to run the print macro. Note, print your file only if requested to do so by your instructor. All right, I'm gonna click. Mine is just gonna go to send note. It opened up send note, and we click OK. So we see that it printed the workbook. So it has all 6 worksheets. If you scroll down, you'll see all 6. So there's first worksheet, second worksheet, which is quarter. See what's in there. Yep. Third worksheet. Fourth worksheet. Fifth worksheet. And the 6th worksheet. So it looks like that worked perfect. 17 says save the Excel workbook named your name. Let me make sure.